behind. This is faith. This is theology. The providing the sense. Why do we do this? Is because of our faith. It's not only because we are militants and advocates in human rights. No, it is also. There we get some language, but it's primarily because we have faith and we have this responsibility to take care of each other, to love each other. This is love put in practice then.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. I almost went there wrong with the name that I gave to the podcast, but Walk, Talk, Listen. And I'm really delighted with today's guest, which is a kind of a special episode because we are going to basically talk about the report that will be launched this week. And I'm not talking with one person, I'm talking with three people at the same time, and they will introduce themselves. Yeah, Elaine, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Elaine Neuenfeldt, and I'm working as the manager of the ACT Alliance Gender Justice Program based in Geneva.
Okay. Nora?
Hi, my name is Nora Khalaf-Elledge, and I work with the Sexual Violence Research Initiative. I lead a working group on gender-based violence and faith.
Okay, great. And for the listeners, who are very faithful, you know that Nora and I had a conversation during this year's CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, that was held in New York. And at that time, we were sitting in the room where now Elaine and Paul are sitting. So, Paul, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Mmbando. I am a medical doctor working as a health programs director at the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, ELCT.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to have you. So, today we are going to talk about a report that will be shared, or maybe it is already shared this week, and it's called 30 Years on Faith in the ICPD Programme of Action. Well, for those who are not familiar with all the jargons and the abbreviations, but the ICPD Programme for Action stands for the International Conference on Population and Development Programme of Action that was adopted in Cairo in 1994. And so ACT Alliance with some other organizations is publishing this report. So, and we would like to talk about that today. So, who would like to start in terms of, what did bring you to, to be part of the development of this report? Who would like to start?
Maybe I can start, and maybe Nora continued because Nora was the one behind the whole knowledge production. And this is, I think, something that motivated ACT Alliance or the gender program, especially under the leadership of my colleague, Dr. Rachel Taverner, to engage in this process with other organizations, Faith to Actions, and doing this in collaboration, is to show how faith-based actors are engaged in the discussion about sexual and reproductive health and rights, about sexual and reproductive health, or all the thematics that are coming around this, family planning, harmful practice, discussing gender norms. And sometimes faith-based organizations, faith-based actors are very much concentrated on implementing, on doing and being active and being the activist and being in the field and doing the programs and changing people's life and committed with people's life. And little bit, and just a little bit of this is documented, is transformed in evidence that can be said, can be told. And in that sense, this kind of production is very important, that we can refer what are faith-based organizations doing throughout the regions, throughout the context. So bringing together evidence from Argentina towards Nigeria, from Tanzania towards Eastern Europe. So this kind of bringing together what is being done and bringing together as an evidence was one of the main motivation. Nora, but maybe you have more the context behind, also.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And the timing also was so crucial right now, because it's been 30 years and it's really a chance to, like you said, to have this record, to have everything in one place and just have this, we wanted to have this one document that meticulously records the contributions of faith actors, their unique position to provide services and also to counter backlash, their resilience, their innovation, and to me, what stands out above anything is their consistency. They've always been there, steadfast, and they're really the first point of contact. They're right there in the community, and they play such an important role. And it was just very important for us to highlight that.
Yeah.
Paul, you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think mine has been, as I told you, my background is a medical doctor, and within the Lutheran Church, we are actually running the section reproductive health and right programs within our facilities. Coming from the church that own close to 200 health facilities in Africa, and looking at the issues that they bring, the practical aspects of sexual and reproductive health and right to the context. I think our engagement in this has been both looking at the challenges that the sector encounters from the issues of family planning, access to the services that are life-saving for maternal and child services that are reducing mortality in that sector, looking at the cultural issues of importance that has really been in touch to issues of girls, adolescent girls, women, sexual and reproductive health issues, and how the faith leaders connect into that. We have seen this aspect of SRHR talking to religious text that speaks to the real issues at ground. Sometimes we have challenges realizing that there's a lot of religious text that speaks to the modern issues that we see in SRHR. There's a lot of technical aspect from the clinical perspective of why women die, why we see so many young women dying from teenage pregnancies. How do we see some of these services, access to it at the facility level can be contributed by the people we call right holders and the other people who hold the stake. So to us, it has been both a mix of bringing that faith communities, the faith leaders' voice, which is very powerful, to life-saving aspects of SRHR and women, girls, and adolescents, and bringing that to also the practical aspect of clinicians who are in our facilities providing these very responsible, high quality services that are life-saving, and being able to speak the differences that we've seen over a period of time together. Yeah.
No, thanks, Paul. And just for the listeners, so when we talk about SRHR, we talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And thank you for making it straight away, the topic very tangible, what it is. We are speaking here not about some terminologies, but we are talking here about experiences and of real people and women and children. So that's really important. I would like to go to you, Nora, because you were asked to write this report and do the research. Two questions to you. One is, if you would have to tell somebody from the 9th floor where Elaine and Paul are sitting to the ground floor in the building at the CCUN in New York, what you had to do, what you were asked to do in this report, what would you say? And then the second question around is, what surprised you most in the research process or the findings?
Yeah, these are good questions. So in terms of what I had to do, I would say to, like we talked about earlier, to produce a record of evidence, of examples and case studies of faith actors advancing the goals laid out by the ICPD, by the Programme of Action, and by doing that, also highlighting the current challenges that they're facing. So especially there was a lot of focus on anti-rights groups, the conservative backlash, and we really wanted to contextualize this to show again. I mean, we're talking about challenges, but at the same time, we're talking about the unique position of faith actors to counter those. So it's really to have everything in one place that we can sort of show, this is the evidence, this is what faith actors have contributed to this, and this is why they should continue to be a very important group of stakeholders. In terms of what surprised me most, I can't say I was surprised by anything. I would say I was impressed, potentially. I read something and I go, oh yeah, I'm not surprised, but yeah, that makes sense that they would do this too. That they're very innovative. They just adapt to the context that they're in, faith actors. And there's a lot of, the challenges are different from context to context, but I think what impressed me most is just, like I said before, the consistency and the persistence with which faith actors tackle these problems.
And so I think the report will be shared this week. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then, but Nora, you finished the report at the end of last year, or when exactly?
I hope I'm not misremembering now. It was sort of a gradual process. We started in the summer. I'm not sure when I could check in the email now.
Okay, so but
my last email to Rachel
it is
was
before 2025. You finished it in 2024.
Yes. I feel very silly right now that I don't have the exact date. Yeah.
So I have a question to all of you then maybe around this, is that is the report dated? Because a lot has happened since January 2025.
Right. Yeah, we all have to rewrite our history books.
Or, you saw the trends and they are basically what we're experiencing at the moment is a...
Yeah, I think I'll let Elaine and Paul answer this, but just we did see the trends before, because we had something very similar happening, 4 years ago. And when we talk about the anti-rights movements and the extremely well-funded organizations behind that, these trends, we're seeing them as well now. But I'll let Elaine and...
Yeah, no, I think it's not only dated, but very much needed now, this kind of evidence of a narrative of faith that is progressive, that is transformative, that is defending human rights, that is saying human rights and human dignity are not in opposition. Actually, human rights are inherent part of a faith tradition, because we are talking about justice. Any faith tradition has a central commitment with justice. And if we are faithfully to this commitment, then these discussions about how a faith actor, a faith community, a faith organization, faith-based organizations can be from its own identity transforming some of the unjust world scheme that we have in terms of our politics, in terms of our economic access to justice, and how this translates then to access to health, access to health care in general. It's not dated, but it's very much needed, because the backlashes and the narrative using, or I would dare say misusing faith, or using faith to justify an approach that is limiting rights, especially rights of women and girls, is very much in place now as a common narrative, as a common discourse. So having this kind of report, I think there is a responsibility even be that this kind of report must be translated in other languages in a way that is accessible, not only this one, but this kind of narrative that is bringing the faith as a transformative force and dynamics must be translated, must be talked about in podcasts like yours here. It must be discussed in circles that is beyond the faith actors, but with feminist organizations, with popular movement, that we can say, even if we are not loud, we are not well funded, we are not well or articulated, but there is evidence. We have faith tradition prophetically saying the word that justice should reign in the world.
And maybe piggybacking on that, I do think the report acknowledges the tensions between the religious institutions and then the sexual and reproductive health and rights. Can I ask one of you to share maybe an example of how faith actors successfully navigated those tensions?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say that I will come from the context of a lot of myth and misunderstanding, misconceptions that people have about faith and SRHR. To us, and in the faith-based organization that I come from, we believe in the continuum of SRHR care happening right from the childhood to the old age. We see women health, girls health, we see people in the reproductive health age, all of them requiring some support from SRHR at all the time, from menstruation to childbirth to the issues that may come to the end, like menopause, all of them requiring an element of care and understanding. From the faith-based organization perspective, we know that many times the church has stand as duty bearers for SRHR, protecting women from harmful practices, for example, maybe FGM, to mention like in my context. But of course,
sorry, Paul, FGM?
Female genital mutilation.
Oh, sorry to have to do this, but no, thanks.
So when we are talking about female genital mutilation as violation of human rights, it is something from the clinical perspective. We know women who might die because of bleeding and infections. The faith communities and leaders who will protect women from premature death because of this Those are the prophetic voices which have standing for women and understanding no woman, no girls should die because of any mischievous cultural activities that's against the human rights. And the same applies that childbirth, for example, is a natural process. But if we're having hundreds of women dying because they just gave birth, I think it's against the human rights. It's the same way when we know a lot of spiritual translation of what has been like the story of Tamar in the Bible, talking about gender-based violence as part of things which have been there for a very long time and they're still happening today. The realization of the common practices that violate women and human rights today are not new, but on the same note, they need to be supported in all best way possible terms in our current world, whether in the practice that the medical professionals are doing or from the big platform that some of our religious leaders may have to stand with women to protect life and its sanctity. I think there is where we come from. Yeah.
Okay. Still, I can imagine that people that are not familiar with faith and faith institutions and faith actors, they still wonder, like, what is that unique or irreplaceable something that faith actors have to offer within this space of reproductive health and rights? Yeah, can you help to unpack that to any of you? Yeah.
I'll say something quickly, and then I would love to hear from Elaine and Paul. Just my 2 cents. I think for me, what stands out right now is just a unique position to counteract the religious interpretations that are pushing obstacles against women accessing their basic human rights. So if faith actors are not included in these processes and their work isn't supported, then we're leaving the stage, if you will, to those conservative fundamentalist voices. And that's a very dangerous situation. Faith actors understand very well how religion interacts with gender issues and how that is a constantly changing situation. And there are lots of faith actors who have for decades worked on on reclaiming religion and saying, well, actually, these are rights that are supported by religion, and they can do this better than other people because they have this moral authority and the trust in the communities.
I can add to this discussion is beyond moral authority. I think there is something called ethical responsibility, which is it's not an obligation, it's not a law, but it's responsibility. If we follow, and I'm speaking as a Christian, from a Christian perspective, if we follow the gospel, if we follow what is in the sacred text for the Christian tradition, there is a responsibility to take care of creation. And take care of creation will go way beyond to take care of the earth and to take care of the environment in general. It's to take care of the bodies. And the bodies of human beings are sacred in our tradition, in our religious confession. And in that sense, if a body of a woman and of a girl is suffering, then it's a responsibility. It's a faith responsibility to take care, to be a place where that body can find support. And that body can find that person is taken seriously in their suffering. And that that reflection has been made by faith leaders, and I want to use faith leaders and faith actors in a very broad way here, because normally when we think about faith leaders and faith actors, we think about the hierarchical responsibility of churches in speaking in the name of the church. I myself, I'm a theologian, and I have been teaching feminist theology in my context. I'm coming from Brazil, and this was part of my teaching with the pastors and the women and men who have been studying and being trained to become pastors in the church. And that is regaining the space that Nora was saying, that regaining that production of knowledge of theology from a feminist perspective, and providing in a very contextual way that the pastor who is going to work in a congregation has the language to address this. It's not the theological production in the books, but it's the possibility to preach on a Sunday morning in a sermon that women's and men's bodies are sacred, and therefore the attention to their needs and their realities coming from the whole cycle of life, thinking about adolescence towards women and men who are in an older age. There is the responsibility to take care, to be together, and to build congregation responsibility with them. And that is behind this. What is the role of faith leaders? Is to provide the care in the community and to provide the logic, the sense behind. This is faith, this is theology. Providing the sense. Why do we do this? Is because of our faith. It's not only because we are militants and advocates in human rights. No, it is also. There we get some language, but it's primarily because we have faith and we have this responsibility to take care of each other, to love each other. This is love put in practice then.
Thanks, Elaine. Yep.
Maybe I will add a bit that from the faith leaders, and I will take an example of my own church, the ELCT. They command a lot of respect and trust from the community.
ELCT?
Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes. Our faith leaders command a lot of respect and trust from the community they serve. And this is a very good standing point for that case. But secondly, we see aspect of women and children as part of the ministry that our church has, evangelizing, social services coming in it, that there's a duty to preserve the ministry that is made of men and women that should have the right to live and the right to continue living in this situation. But we also have it as the women and children as an institution within the community of faith. And as we help this grow, that we realize that the sanctity of life needs to be protected for all involved in this, what we call institutions of the church. Yeah.
Thanks. A question to you, Nora, because both Elaine as well as Paul talk from a Christian point of view, right? That's correct. So, but the report has looked at different faiths. So, yeah, did you find any differences or similarities when you were writing the report and doing the research?
Yeah, there are definitely differences because, well, first of all, not every religion in the world is text-based, or in the same way that your three big ones are. I mean, there's so many different religions, and they're not always organized the same way. Sometimes it's easier to find examples from those religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, that are organized, I want to say, in not similar ways, but they have more similarity to each other than other religions, and it's easier to find examples. Also, we know that most bilateral or multilateral organizations have traditionally partnered with Christian-based organizations, so we've always had more examples from that. We are increasingly finding, and we're seeking out examples from other faith groups, but we can see similar aspirations and driving forces behind that, behind faith actors from different faith traditions. Their reasons for taking actions are always very similar. One thing I wanted to add is that, especially now when you asked about different faith traditions, is that a lot of times, what I've always criticized in development is that a lot of times the way the development industry engages with religion is almost entirely through partnerships. So we outsource religious literacy, which is the skill to really understand the way religion interacts with social norms and society. We outsource that to faith actors, and then we constantly reevaluate. We say, well, what is really their contribution, and then we put faith actors in this position where they have to always prove that they're stakeholders, and I think what's missing is that so-called secular policymakers and practitioners build their own religious literacy to really engage with gender and religion. So what I'm trying to say is partnering isn't enough to really engage with religion and gender, and once development successfully does that, they will see for themselves that you cannot even produce a coherent gender analysis, which you have to do for any project in development. You need a gender analysis. You cannot do that without acknowledging, analyzing, and appreciating the role of religion. And once you do that, you will then come across those progressive faith actor and their work and their voices. When you do that homework, you would automatically find them.
I could not agree more, Nora. I could not agree more with you. You said so perfectly that the religious literacy. I find myself always explaining the difference between why, or the need to say why you are engaged in this, why we are doing this, why, and there is a misunderstanding, or I don't know the right word in English, but it's a kind of, it's a plain understanding, a superficial understanding about religion is this, and then normally we are in the same place with all those religious actors that are causing a problem, that are causing disturbing the discourse of religion and faith as being as a transformative actor. I think to rebuild that notion that faith can be a force for change, and rebuild that energy, that good energy, that religion and faith is building community, is building trust, is part of, then as this is part of building the change. It's not the main force, it's contributing to the changing that other civil society organizations, that NGOs in general are willing to produce. But then this need to understand what is the place of religion, and that religion and faith is very different from the religion institutions. Faith practices are different from religious institutions. Churches are different from community life. I think all this terminology, we are putting all this in one basket, and to refine these understandings are very much needed.
No, I really appreciate you, mentioning the need to, because I think we are living in this really polarized world, but one of the reasons is that we think we talk about the same thing, but we actually have a different definition. So you talk about something else, right? So I would like to go back to the different faiths that you're addressing in the report as well, Nora. Did you find anything around collaboration across faiths, and especially in the field of policy and advocacy? And if so, yeah, how is that enhancing the impact of the work that is needed? And well, I said, Nora, it's not only for you; it's for all three of you. So
Yeah, I can start off, and then maybe for more specific examples, Elaine and Paul have good pointers. There is a lot of multi-faith collaboration because faith actors know that they are more likely heard when they're working in collaboration. So it is very natural to have those multi-faith collaborations, and we've seen them within countries, we've seen them across countries, we've seen them within different religious denominations, we've seen them between different religions altogether. So we try to highlight that because partnership and collaboration is actually a big advantage of faith actors, something that they do really, really well. But I'll hand over to Elaine.
Yeah, we have seen very good examples of interfaith, multi-faith working. Giving an example of, in my case, in Tanzania, we had one of the best collaborations for an interfaith task force for communicable diseases. When we had COVID-19 in Tanzania, we had faith groups, all faith groups coming together and forming a strategy on how they could communicate to their people in their different faiths, on how to protect themselves, how to protect the community, how to have safer worship practices that were very helpful. At the time when maybe political wings, they were not very reliable, the faith communities at their interfaith united, and they agree that our job as a faith communities, irrespective of our walks of life, is to speak the truth and tell our people the truth that will save them. That made it huge difference. We saw aspects like vaccines being accepted highly within our country, but it was made possible by interfaith during that time. They went ahead and even did a study on how the pandemic affected women, girls, adolescents, and children. Some of them who drop out of school, they had to be out of school because of that, and we had massive teenage pregnancies, people taking advantage of them. The faith leaders stood against them firmly, and some of the narrative that they brought out during that time, an interfaith communication strategy on communicable diseases. It included, among other things, how to protect women, how to protect girls and school children from harmful practices during that time, including things like FGM and all that. To us, this was a very powerful tool which taught us how, even us from the medical field, this strong religious platform of people of different faith could help us navigate through that very difficult time. If we, as a medical fraternity, we didn't have a lot of voice on that, but they did, and very useful.
yeah, if there is one recommendation from the report you hope the listeners walk away with, what would that be?
I can start off again. I want to say two things. One is, of course, that we are hoping that policymakers and practitioners who read this recognize and start actively supporting faith actors in their work advance sexual and reproductive health and rights, and to really understand the crucial role they play. The other thing I hope that, I mean, any report I write, I contribute to, or any project I work on, I always say this, and I always hope that we in development learn to be more comfortable with complexity and messiness. Because I think Elaine mentioned that before as well, we look at something as, you know, a black and white category, and when it is more complicated than that, we either step away or we outsource it, or we just, you know, we don't engage. And I say this a lot of times in workshops, that before you look at someone else's context, you need to really understand yours. And in your own, you understand how messy it is. And you'd always say, well, actually, we have to look at the context here, or this was different because back then, you know, this and this and this law was there, or society was different. And you'll appreciate and accept that messiness and that complexity. When you look at someone else's context, we want it to be all easily categorizable. And that just doesn't exist. It is messy, and we just need to sometimes sit in that uncomfortable feeling and appreciate that. And that's something that's really missing in development. And I'd hope that would be a takeaway as well.
Yeah. Coming from a faith-based organization and alliance working with faith-based organizations, I really appreciate that the report showcased that the thematic issue that is difficult, polemic, sometimes complicated, sometimes taboo, like sexual and reproductive health and rights, said in the whole terminology. We don't stop on sexual health. We say that included in that sexual health, we have the notion of rights. And if this is not enough, we have still another terminology, which I very much like also, and it's very much in use in the faith tradition also. It's the reproductive justice, because again, we put in the center the notion of justice. And as we talk about economic justice and other justice, climate justice, we are also talking about the reproductive of life, not only the production of life, but also the reproduction with the lenses, with the terminology of justice. And we don't shy away from that difficult conversation. And I think the report gave us, again, for church and faith-based actors, the affirmation that talking and continue to talk about it in times of pushbacks, in times of very difficult and challenging narratives that are using faith in a very limited way, continue to be prophetic and using that terminology and bringing that discussion to the table to maintain the dialogue alive is something that is very much needed. And I think this is something that I would like to our members in ACT Alliance to continue to see, that it's not in vain. It's not for nothing. It is for something. It is saving, as Paul is saying, it's saving lives. And when we systematize that knowledge, gives back to those faith actors that are putting their risk and their name to continue to talk about this. It's risky. It's not only risky in terms of your voice, your words are going to be misused. Sometimes it's taking really a life risk for some people who are engaging and defending that women's bodies' autonomy is something connected with their faith. It's not easy to stand for that affirmation, but I think the report showed that this is something needed. This is something that we can do. We need to continue to do, and we need more solidarity when we know about those actions throughout the regions, throughout every region. We have examples from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America. It's not only limited to one region to one tradition. So throughout the regions there, we can also then engage in solidarity, because I think the other face of justice is solidarity.
And for my case, the recommendation is coming from this whole aspect that the faith leaders, the faith-based organizations continue to provide SRHR services. One thing that we believe in is that SRHR is a continuum. It's a continuum of care, which it doesn't get interrupted anywhere throughout the life process. From believing that young girls needs to be protected from harmful practices, they need education to understand how their body functions, and probably preventing the teenage pregnancies and maternal death for the people who still have a lot of goals to achieve in their lives. It comes to women at their reproductive health age, knowing that no one should die just because of the normal processes of life, like childbirth. This goes up to the old age on issues related to issues like mental health, but of course even menopause, as some of the situations that we see. We believe that the faith communities that own services within the health, for example, Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, our hospitals are providing a comprehensive reproductive health services, including family planning. All of these, they come from the geared aspiration that should protect lives, and all lives matter, including the lives of everyone, being young or an adult of any gender. And this has to be taken as part of the religious commitment from our religious leaders who, from the first place, they brought these facilities to exist. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. I would like to piggyback on what you said, Nora, around acknowledging that, you know, these discussions are difficult, it can be messy. As part of learning, and some of you know, I always go back to the rubber ducky of Ernie of Sesame Street, and most listeners know it is about a scene where Ernie wants to learn how to play the saxophone, and he starts playing the saxophone, and he hears all the time, you hear him, you know, the squeaky sound, and that's because he loves to hold on to his ducky, and so, but you can't play the saxophone and hold on to your ducky. So what I'm always, you know, what his band members mentioned to him is, Ernie, you need to put the ducky down. So I think all in these situations where there is polarization and really we need to, you know, find some common ground that we can even start a discussion. Yeah, I would like to ask you, to all of you, what is your ducky? What do you need to put down? You know, in this particular case, in this particular context.
It's difficult to put duckies down, and it's difficult. It's not a giving up things. I believe in dialogue. Dialogue is not for me as a Latin American, dialogue is not a methodology. It's a way of understanding life. I believe in deep conversations, in possible conversations. And I'm a feminist theologian. So in order to have conversations with some church leaders sometimes, I need to adapt my language. So I need to put my ducky down in terms of, I cannot oblige other people to have the same level of concepts and the same level that I have, as I will not also, I will also expect that other people are putting their duckies down in terms of finding that common lake where we can then happily put our duckies to swim. That is my my way of dealing and my way of understanding of having that difficult conversations or challenging conversations. We need to find common language, and sometimes common language, common terminology that are in the way of bringing change. We are now in the Commission of Population Development session, and we see how language is important, how terminology is important, and how we are giving, and how we need to negotiate that understanding of that language. When we say family or families, what is behind our notion, our understanding when we use this? When we say sexual rights or bodily autonomy, what do we understand about this? So I think the more that we talk about and we have the courage to put our concepts on the table, then I think there we can find and in that sense, I would never start with putting all my concepts. These are my concepts and I'm not giving up. No, I can live with other possibilities. Life is complex. Life is much more than one way. It's always complex. And I thanks be to God that there is always more coffee and possibility than the American coffee. It's always Brazilian coffee, Ethiopian coffee. I thanks be to God that there is diversity of coffee as it is diversity of life.
Thanks, Elaine. And just also thanks for realizing that when you're asked to put the ducky down, it doesn't mean you cannot put the ducky up again. That's not what the story of Ernie is about. He will, after he learned how to play the saxophone, he picked up his ducky again. Yeah. Paul?
Yes. Thank you. If I may put it in my way, that whenever I speak with the religious leaders, I always tell them, first of all, I'm a Christian. I'm a very good Christian. And secondly, I'm a medical doctor. I might speak in any of those two positions if at all I want to make my points get to be known. We have a lot of issues that may be misunderstood, sometimes misconstrued, sometimes misconceived, especially if they're being spoken on a secular world that is not necessarily from our clinical perspective. As a medical doctor, I cannot fear to say that we still have an HIV/AIDS within our community as part of SRHR issues. And the most of the people we see getting infected today happen to be girls, actually girls below the age of 20. And if we have to speak like that, somebody has to understand there's an important aspect of sexuality education which has to come in protection. As a medical doctor, I will also have to say it is true that some of the very important aspect of maternal, we talked about maternal mortality and infant mortality. We talk about hundreds of these women who dies from childbirth, which is a normal process. When you talk about SRHR, some of our faith leaders, they may say this is a foreign agenda. But look here, we have hundreds of women dying from most of sub-Saharan African countries because of childbirth. And can we talk about this being their life matters? It's the issues of justice. It's the issues of them given a chance to live, for improving care and all that. And some of the conversation, like, of course, in my country, elective abortion is illegal, but we still have people who do, who will procure abortion or will have miscarriage. And it's ethical within the medical field to still take a very good care of these people to make sure that they can still have another chance to live. Some aspect that may take us to think on this. It is also a lot of conversation that are coming today. A lot of conversation that are coming around family planning agenda, for example. To me, as a medical doctor, I still think family planning is life-saving. whether it may have a lot of other definition, very different, but it's contraception, which is modern, that has helped so many women to have a chance to have a good health, plan for their childbirth, and be alive at the end of the day for having bodies that can handle that. How can we discuss this now? It depends from which angle we are coming from, but to me, I still believe life is sanctified. There's sanctity of life, which we have to protect. As Christians, as any other religion, I've not seen any religion that may be against the continuity of life and the sanctity of life. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, the listeners cannot see this, but I'm showing now a ducky that looks like a giraffe. So you're a very interesting ducky. So, Nora.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you last time we talked, that my rubber ducky is it really comes down to me public speaking, because I'm an introvert, and the years of working from home now have really made this ducky way bigger and harder to put down. But if if I want to, make a difference in this field, I need to speak. And every time I get the question to speak on a panel or at a conference, or and now on a podcast which is recorded, and then I get really nervous, and I typically remember what I wanted to say afterwards, or I'm worried about it not coming out the perfect way. I mean, as a kid, I stuttered for many years, so there's some very psychological trauma I've been working through, and I'm starting to realize this as I grow older. But I'm also unlearning gender norms that girls shouldn't be loud, girls shouldn't be troublemakers. Just make sure everyone likes you. And I'm teaching my kids, to be loud and proud and challenge things they don't like. But then I have to do this myself. And I constantly notice that I'm trying to take the easy way out and stay in my comfort zone. So that's a big rubber ducky to me, and something I'm working on, because at the end of the day, you just have your voice, right? And we're trying. Elaine she put that so beautifully when she said that people on the ground who work on these issues, they do risk their lives, and it's very hard every day to go and say, no, based on religion as well, women have these and these rights. So when we want to support their voices effectively, then we need to use our own voices as well.
Thank you, three of you, so much. This particular podcast is a spin-off of a 100-mile walk that I started in 2012, where I try to walk to raise awareness and funds for hunger, poverty, and justice. And it has gone a little bit out of hand. We are, I don't know, 250 episodes or something in. But what I hope with this podcast is that it connects people. So, I'm connecting you with the listeners, we're connecting with each other. And I'm also going to connect you with the previous guest. And the previous guest has a question for you.
I'd want to ask the guest, what is their most inspiring journey that they've had?
I can start. Elaine, if you wanted to go first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Mine is just, I guess it's picking up from what I was just talking about with my kids. And this might sound like a cliche, but it is being a parent. And it has just challenged me physically and emotionally in a way that I never thought possible. And it is so connected to my life, because to my work, because the conversations I have with them and what I hear from them when they come home from school and they tell me about things they learned about what it means to be, a girl or a boy. And I just think, oh, wow, what we're doing here is so important, and it's so connected to my everyday life. And I mean, my oldest knows exactly what I'm doing for work. She's 5, but she knows exactly what I'm doing, and she's very proud of that, and she understands. And I feel that that responsibility to keep going. And she would ask me in the afternoon, what did you do today? Did you make a difference? And I think going on that journey with them together is definitely the most impactful thing for me.
You gave a good inspiration, Nora. Yeah, I am a mother of a 27 years old young woman, and she has been exactly this when she was young, very child. She was very understanding what I was doing, and now she's my partner. She's my good company. She's inspiring me, and I know that I'm inspiring her and her friends also. And this interaction with younger people, I'm very much, it's not only my daughter, but it's also younger generation that are picking up the issues that have been so difficult for us to discuss. I'm speaking from a church context, from a theology, teaching theology context. And then I see some of the younger generation just going through issues regarding human sexuality, LGBTQI integration in the church, or I feel inspired by their courage of taking actions and taking positions. So together with my daughter, there are other groups in the churches that are just breaking through. Here during the CPD meeting here, the session we got through yesterday, I saw younger women talking easily in public and articulating the discourse. What I think for some of our generation, I'm even before you, Nora, I think it was somehow difficult to break through, and especially in my context, I'm a pastor from a church, talking feminist theology was still a taboo, was still breaking some barriers. And I'm glad that the next generation are going through without so many difficulties, even knowing that the backlashes and the discourse and the life is becoming so difficult and challenging to keep that transformative perspective on faith or gender justice in general is very difficult, but they are going.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. I think my journey has been, I've had quite a few, but I would say one important journey that I made with interfaith leaders while we had issues of crisis within our country for health-related issues. I work with many religious, close to 20 of them, in looking at the health issues and the challenges that we had, especially during COVID-19. And out of that conversation, I learned that, first of all, we have so much in common than what we have differently as people of different faith. I saw the language on issues of gender and reproductive health rights coming from all faith in their religious text. I saw that coming on issues of so common, but a lot of people have a myth with it today of issues, for example, gender-based violence and how it comes from different aspects. I saw issues of hygiene and prevention of diseases coming out from different faiths. And we built this very strong bond with interfaith leaders from very different faiths, talking about health, talking about issues of youth, talking about issues of SRHR, defining some of the terms that some of them we think they're very sensitive, but coming from their faith and their own citation. And we wrote a book called An Interfaith Communication Strategy for Communicable Diseases. To me today, I still find a lot of friendship, a lot of support, a lot of solidarity that came out of that work. And it meant a lot in my profession, in my work, but of course, how to relate some of the work we do at the hospital, at a clinical level, with what different faith they can think at the community that they serve. And this has been very important. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, the next guest will be lucky because he or she will be getting 3 questions, right? Because you are with 3. So your question for the next guest, Paul.
I think I really love to pose a question on how could the next guest relate what is happening in a global politics today compared to what has been achieved in the last 30 years. What do they see? What is their fear? What are their worries? What could they do to make the difference?
Okay. Elaine?
For me would be, what gives you hope? What gives you hope? I'm from a faith perspective, hope for me is something that keeps me moving. It gives us an horizon that gives me the motivation to continue to walk. So what gives you hope in your life, in your work, in your journey towards justice?
Nora?
I like that question. I think that's the one I mentioned last time as well. Just, what gives you hope? What makes you get out of bed in the morning and keep going? I think my question would be around youth engagement, just because that's something we just talked about at the very end now, about inspiring young people and next generation, and also because the report talks quite a bit about youth engagement. And I remember when I was young, I was so frustrated with, seeing backlash, and I would be told, well, but if you think about it, any change or any progress in women's rights was always met with backlash. Think about when women were first fighting for the right to vote, something that we now in mostly anywhere in the world we accept and support. It was met with a lot of backlash. So what my question would be, what are other inspiring things or helpful messages we can give to young people, or some concrete ways to support and include them better?
Okay. These conversations always go fast. And so, but before I thank you for your willingness to talk with me and do, for everything you do. Any question that I did not ask you today, but I should have asked you?
I enjoyed the conversation.
Good. And well, we need to, first of all, of course, we need to make sure that as soon as the report is available, that people download it and read it. I hope I will get the information where, well, it should be on our website as well, on the JLI one as well, and on ACT Alliance. Yeah.
It will be on LinkedIn. Yeah, we will put on Faith in Gender Justice LinkedIn page as soon as we have finalized the layout of the report.
Okay. And is that this week or is that in the coming weeks?
I'm sure that it is by next week.
Okay, great. Yeah, really thank you for today, for the conversation, and yeah, I learned a lot, and also the report was really inspiring and very much necessary. My answer to the question in terms of is it outdated, it is not outdated. I've read it and I think it's still very relevant and important. So yeah, good luck with everything you do, and yeah, until we meet again and speak again.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen.
please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.